Hello, my name is Carl Surrey, and this is a video tutorial for the Facebook group called Fans of Serif Software. Now, this is a tutorial for PhotoPlus. I'm doing it in version X8, but you should be able to do this in earlier versions. Very sorry about my throat at my voice at the moment. I've got a little slight cold coming on, I think. Yesterday I did a tutorial for Affinity Photo, which in itself was an adaptation of a Photoshop tutorial, and it was about adding a suntan to an image of a model, and I used this image that's on screen, which I got from pixabay.com. After doing that tutorial, I had a comment from someone asking about whether I thought them sticking with PhotoPlus was worth it, or whether they should invest in Affinity Photo. To which I sort of basically replied that if you're happy with PhotoPlus and it's doing what you want it to do, stick with it. Because it is, in some areas it is better than Affinity Photo, in other areas it isn't. So, but as long as it's doing the job that you want it to do, stick with it. There's no need to upgrade, at least not at the moment, not until Affinity Photo probably gets into version 2 or 3, where they have got a few more things in it, like better filter choices and things like that, which I would like to see personally. So, to prove that Affinity Photo, which was adapted a Photoshop tutorial, I want to show that PhotoPlus can also adapt the same tutorial. So this is what I'm going to do. We're going to add a suntan to this same image, and I'm going to pretty much do it in the same way. The thing you have to remember is that Affinity Photo, PhotoPlus, and I imagine other photo editing programs all share a lot of details that are very similar to Photoshop. They all use layers, they have very similar adjustments, very similar blending modes, and if they haven't got them exactly the same, there should be a way around it or an approximation of it somewhere in their program. And you can always look at the help files of the particular program to see if you can find a way around things. So what I'm going to do first with this is I'm going to duplicate this layer. I'm going to right click and come up to duplicate. I'm not going to name it, I'm just going to click OK. And what I will do is I'm going to hide this. I'm going to use this later on. So I'll just click in there to hide that. And then I will come down to the layer below. And now we're going to start the tutorial sort of properly as it was like in Affinity Photo. And the first thing we're going to need is a fill layer. So if you come up to layers and new fill layer, again I'm not going to name it, I'm just going to click OK. And in this box where it's got fill, let me move this box over slightly. If you click in there, you will then get the color selector for the fill that you want. So you can move the slider down here to get a color range you want, so like the oranges, and then find a color you like. I'm going to use the same colors that I had in the Affinity Photo tutorial, so it's 198 in red, 148 in the green, and 115 in the blue, and then just click OK, click OK. Now we need to change the blending mode of this. Now the Photoshop tutorial and Affinity tutorial we use color burn, but PhotoPlus does not have a color burn blending mode, but it does have burn, which I'm assuming, and I'm going to work on the fact that it is the same thing. So now we have the start of the tan coming on, but we now need to sort of blend this better. So we need to come back to this layer and right click on it and come to properties, and then we have the layers property here, and then underneath here we have the blending options. So we want to, or the blending ranges, which if you've watched the Affinity Photo tutorial, it comes up with a sort of a 2 square graphs, but this is more like the Photoshop tutorial where you have a slider or 2 sliders. The top one will affect just the layer we're on, and the bottom one affects how the layers below interact with this particular layer. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to, you could just click on like the arrow and drag it all the way down, and as you can see it has some pretty dramatic effects. What we need to do is sort of split this arrow in half, and to do that you hold down the Alt key, click on probably near the right side of this arrow, and then you just divide that arrow in half. You can then let go of the Alt key once it's separated, and then just bring this nearer to the highlights end of the scale to just sort of slightly tone this into near the highlights, but you're still leaving some pixels up here in the dark, in the shadows of the range. So I'm going to go to about there, which in my case it's like 0, and I've moved this to 242, and the 2 white sections are still on 2555. So once you're happy with that, you can just click OK, and then we're going to add another fill layer above this. So again I'm going to come up to layers, new fill layer, I'm not going to name it, and I'm going to trust me to move in the wrong way. Again, you can pick the colours that you want, but I'm going to use the same ones I used in the other tutorial. So that's 157, 133, and 103. And click OK. Click OK on this one. And this one, the blend mode is multiply, which is the same in Affinity Photo. Then right click this, come up to properties. Now this one, first of all I'm going to do the effect on the underlying layer. So I'm going to press Alt and split the white arrows, and you don't have to move it too far to sort of get that white background to come back in. In fact, I've gone so close I've joined them back up again. Right, so I've just moved it a little bit, but now I'm going to affect just this layer. So again I'm going to press Alt, divide the white arrow, and then I'm just going to bring it down towards the shadow end, and then find a point where I'm happy with the way they're blending, which is roughly about there. So in my particular case, I've gone 0, 0 because the black hasn't moved, and the white has moved to 37 for one half of it, and the other half is still on 255. And I've just moved this slightly, so this is on 252 and the other one's on 255. So I'll click OK. So I'm fairly happy with the way that looks at the moment. So I'll then just add a selective color adjustment, and much like in the Affinity Photo tutorial, you can move these around to affect how much effect, the effect this is going to have, tone the yellows and what have you. And if I use the same settings, which, if I remember rightly, it was the cyan was on 46% and magenta was on -5 and yellows was on -23. So I will leave that as is. Now what I will do is I will just come back to layer 2 and I will just lower the opacity slightly, and then again on layer 1 I will lower the opacity down to about 88%, and this other one I lowered to 89%. Right, I've highlighted the bottom layer here. If I hold down the Alt key and click on the little dot next to the image icon, it will turn off all the layers above. You said hopefully, there we go. So that was how it started out, and that is how it looks now. So really then the last thing is this top layer. I've just activated it again, and as this is a copy of the bottom layer, it will sort of hide all of the layers below, and this is where I'm going to sort of bring back the eye and lip colors. I didn't do as good a job with this in the Affinity Photo because I decided to do the masks at the very last minute, and I added them to each layer, and that doesn't really work in PhotoPlus. I found the best way to do this is to do the mask last. So I'm going to use the Smart Selection brush, and I'm going to zoom in. In fact, I found that the Smart Selection brush works better in PhotoPlus than it does in Affinity Photo. I've got a brush size of about 25 and a tolerance of 5 and a border of 1, and then it's just a case of painting as close as I dare. Around the lips. I mean, if you're doing this yourself, you can do a much better job. I'm just doing this quickly. Right, that's nearly there. Right. Just going to quickly move up to the eyes. Right, I've gone a bit too far, so I'll come to minus to subtract certain areas. come over to the other eye, go back to add, just subtract that bit there. Right, now I'm not going to select the hair because it's been a long time since I did this sort of selection in PhotoPlus, and I must admit I can't 100% remember about how you do the fine hairs, but if you're more adept with PhotoPlus, you can then go on and protect the hair as well. So once I have those areas selected, I'm just going to modify that, and I'm going to feather this, and I'm going to go quite high with the pixels, say around the 40% mark. Click OK, and then I'm just going to add a layer mask. So this will protect the eyes and bring back everything that's behind in the lower layers, which is the tan. So I can get rid of the selection area by pressing Ctrl and D, and you can probably see that there is some, you can just see the slight outline here of where the selection isn't quite as good as it could be, but we can get around that by, you can do this either two ways. You can right click this mask and then come to view mask. So you've got this is what the mask looks like, and get black as your foreground color. Come to the brush tool and have a fairly low opacity. We're going to come down to around the 15% mark, and you can just paint black just to sort of slowly take that edge away. But it's probably easier to do it when you can see the image, but just make sure that it is the mask that is highlighted, it has a white border around it, and then you can just paint black on here, and because you've got a soft edge brush, you can sort of blend that in a bit better and do it slowly because you've got a lower opacity brush. It's not perfect, but and then it's the best I can do. Right, so like I said, I haven't protected the hair, so that is affected by the colour layers that we have lower down. So what I'll do is I'll hold down the Alt key, click on the hide show button. So that was the start, and that is the finish. That has seemed to have gone quite a bit darker than what it was, so I could lower the opacity a bit on that one. Yeah, that's a bit better. It's just a case of fine tuning once you get to a certain point. So again, I'll come back to this. That was the start, and that is the finish. So, but the only thing I haven't really been able to do is protect the hair, but that's more a case of I've forgotten a bit of, about how to sort of get all these fine hairs. But you can check the help files. That if you to check what it is you need to do. Basically, all you need to do is just adapt your program to whichever tutorial you're watching, be it a Photoshop one or an Affinity Photo one, because pretty much all the tools are in there somewhere. You just need to find them and adapt it for your program. So I hope this has been of some help to PhotoPlus users. So thank you for watching. Or before I do that, just need to export this, save this under a new name so you don't ruin or lose your original. So thank you for watching and goodbye.